Welcome to this episode of the Patrick Coffin Show. We're going to talk about China, resurgent, hegemonic China, the country that invented totalitarianism, specifically how the Catholic Church is faring there, and sort of the broad opening the aperture into the history of China. We read a lot about China in the news, how much of it is fake, how much of it is real. Steve Mosher is here to talk about it. He's the author of Bully of Asia. This is going to be one to remember and to share on the Patrick Coffin Show. If you like what you hear, check out www.coffinnation.com, the largest culture restoring community in the world. Coffinnation.com. Check out the trailer. Maybe it's for you. Find out what people in 25 different countries are enjoying, and love to have you on the inside. Coming up, Steve Mosher on China. Don't go away. As promised, Dr. Stephen Mosher is president of the Population Research Institute and a leading authority on China. He frequently testifies before Congress, is published widely, including his latest book, Bully of Asia, Why China's Dream is the New Threat to World Order. Hey, Steve, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your time.
Hello, Patrick.
What's the genesis of your interest in China? It seems not a lot of Americans kind of focus on China, per se, from a historical point of view. Where did you get interested in China?
Well, I was a naval officer with the 7th Fleet at the tail end of the Vietnam War. I was in Japan for several years, began studying Japanese history, culture, and language, and realized quickly that much of it was derivative. I don't mean to insult the Japanese, but their language, their culture, everything from the characters to the way they dress came from China during the Tang Dynasty, 9th century China. And so I decided to trace that culture, that history, that language back to its source. That led me to Hong Kong. I resigned my commission in the U.S. Navy. I went to the Chinese University of Hong Kong for a year to study, to learn to read, write, and speak Mandarin and Cantonese. Chinese University of Hong Kong, of course, has been much in the news lately because that was one of the centers of the unrest in Hong Kong against the rule that was coming from Beijing that Hong Kong should bow to China.
Mm-hmm. And then that was given over by the English in 1997? Is that the magic year?
Yeah, the 100-year lease that China had signed with Great Britain on Kowloon, what's called the New Territories, expired in 1997. And despite Britain's best efforts to hold on to the Pearl of the Orient, Hong Kong, Deng Xiaoping, who was then China's leader, insisted on having it back, threatened military action. And so at the end of the day, the British left. But the British left what they thought was a democratic system of local governance in place, which by 2017, 3 years ago, was supposed to result in an entirely locally elected legislature, elected by the Hong Kong people themselves without interference from the Chinese Communist Party. That didn't happen. What did happen in 2017 was Beijing tore up the Sino-British Agreement, which would have brought democracy to Hong Kong, and the demonstrations that we see now are a result of that betrayal of trust on the part of the Communist Party.
Is this attitude part of what you call early in the book the grand unification, that China's zero-sum vision of the world, where it's China contra mundum, wanting to be the dominant player on the planet?
Well, you know, for 2,000 years, Patrick, China had the largest population, the largest territory, the largest standing army, the largest economy in the world. It was surrounded by, well, to the north was the tundra, Siberia. Very few people live there. Mm-hmm. To the east was the Pacific Ocean. To the west were endless stretches of desert, which we now call Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan and Turkmenistan. And to the south were the Himalayas. So China considered itself to be a kind of naturally superior to all of the other countries that abounded on the earth, all of the other peoples that abounded on the earth, because they were surrounded by countries that were much smaller and weaker than they were. So I think that bred a sense of natural superiority that the Chinese Communist Party has taken to extreme limits today. And yes, it's trying to absorb Taiwan, of course, which it claims has been sovereign Chinese territory since the beginning of time. It hasn't. It was only settled by the Chinese a couple centuries ago. But once the Chinese empire touches any body of water or spit of land, in the view of the Chinese Communist Party, it belongs to China forever. So they're moving into Central Asia, they're moving north into Manchuria, across the border into Siberia, they're moving south into Southeast Asia, and of course they're claiming the entire South China Sea as sovereign Chinese territory. That's roughly like the United States claiming the entire Caribbean as sovereign U.S. territory, ignoring the competing claims of other countries. It's an extraordinary territorial claim, one we've seen only rarely in human history.
How different was this attitude under Chiang Kai-shek and before the Communist Revolution in China? Is there a kind of a nascent, almost echo of the dynastic view of China that goes back before Christ? Is that?
Well,
go ahead.
There was a fork in the road in China in 1911, after the fall of the last Chinese dynasty, the Qing dynasty, what we call the Manchu dynasty from time to time. And there was a strong popular democratic movement in China. It was led by Sun Yat-sen, who spent many years in Hawaii, was very much influenced by the American system of government, and designed for the Republic of China a system of government modeled upon the United States system of government, with a legislative branch, an executive branch, a judicial branch. He added a control branch because there was a lot of corruption in China, and he thought there needed to be an extra agency. But it was basically American-style democracy that he hoped to bring to China. And in the 20s and 30s, before the Japanese invasion, China appeared on the verge of going democratic, of becoming a free market democracy. If it had, the world would be a much different and I argue better place. The communist revolution was on the way to being eliminated in the 1930s, and then the whole strategic situation changed because Japan invaded China, forced Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists of the Republic of China to turn away from dealing with the communist threat and turn towards dealing with the threat of foreign invasion. And Chiang Kai-shek would later say that this was a terrible tragedy for the Chinese people because the Communist Party was a disease of the heart, and the Japanese invasion was a disease of the skin. And eventually, he said, the Japanese will leave, but if we don't defeat the communists, they will be here for a long, long time, and the Chinese people will suffer. That was prophetic. That's exactly what happened. China fell to the communists in 1949, and so for the last 70 plus years, China has been dominated by the 94 million members of the Chinese Communist Party, who eat, drink, live, travel, celebrate banquets, all at the people's expense, without contributing very much, if anything, to the national economy.
Hey, this is Patrick Coffin. If you like what you see and hear, and you want to see and hear more, consider joining Coffin Nation as a full member. Just click right here and find out more about what that means. Nipsey, my fedora. That's Coffin Nation, the world's largest online community of culture builders. Click right here. See you on the inside.